Sticking with the NBA, Game 4 is tonight between the Clippers and the Utah Jazz and the Philadelphia 76ers and the Atlanta Hawks. Want to briefly preview Game 4 first of the Clippers and the Jazz. This Clippers team has probably been the most difficult team to evaluate all postseason. I mean, this is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One day you think you know what this team's going to give you. The next day, you don't. And I will say this about the LA Clippers, because entering this postseason, to me, they had the most pressure heaped onto them. And to their credit, they answered the call in round one. It wasn't in the fashion that we all expected, but the reality is they beat the Dallas Mavericks in the first round. Now they're into round two. But this is a different, and they blew out the Jazz in Game 3. That absolutely had to happen. And they really just pulled away fourth. I think the score is a little bit misleading for how nip and tuck, for the most part, not really nip and tuck, but the game was a little bit tighter than the score would suggest. But this Clippers team, two very different scenarios trailing 0-2 to the Dallas Mavericks as opposed to the Utah Jazz. And it's not for the mere fact that, okay, you lost the first two games at home against Dallas and you had to go on the road and beat basically 2.5 guys out of 5. You beat Luka Doncic and then some combination and amalgamation of Dorian Finney-Smith, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Jalen Brunson, who really were the three only guys that showed up for the Dallas Mavericks this postseason. Maybe Boban Marjanovic for 2 games. Kristaps was irrelevant. He didn't play. Dwight Powell didn't play. Josh Richardson really didn't do much. That's a different 0-2 deficit than 0-2 to the Utah Jazz. And again, not just because the first 2 games were played in Utah, which is a big difference. You have Game 4 on your home floor. But this is a deeper and a much better Utah Jazz team that's got so much more depth. And the reality is this Game 4 is a must-win for the Clippers. This is the series right here. The Clippers aren't coming back against the Utah Jazz if they trail 3-1. This isn't the Dallas Mavericks. This is not going to happen. They will not come back from 3-1. They will not go to Utah and win 2 road games if they're trailing 3-1. That's just not going to happen. And the big key, and ultimately I do think that the Clippers will win this series. Will win Game 4 rather. Scratch that. Did not say they will win the series, but they will win Game 4. But the key for the Utah Jazz is Bojan Bogdanovic, because he was awful in Game 3. With the game hanging in the balance, he was 2 for 10, 1 for 5 from the three-point line, scored in single digits for 9 points. When he is at his best and actually complimenting Donovan Mitchell, who's been scorching the Clippers in this postseason, he has scored over 30 in all 3 games and over 40 twice. He's been averaging 37 points per game on over 48.5% shooting from the 3, over 50% from the floor. If Bogdanovic can complement Donovan Mitchell, now the Jazz have basically been unbeatable this year. But the reason why I think the Clippers will win Game 4 is because Donovan Mitchell is obviously having to tolerate the pain that he's dealing with and managing the pain in his ankle. Mike Conley's not playing. So I just think that the urgency will finally kick in for the Clippers, and they'll recognize, hey, we have to take care of home court tonight. So I think the Clippers are ultimately going to win Game 4. Not to mention, listen, Kawhi and PG, 34, 31 points combined. Reggie Jackson was 5 for 6 from the three-point line. Nicholas Batum, 4 for 6. Now, I don't think those 2 guys are going to shoot nearly as well, but it doesn't negate the fact that they are playing at home. I think the level of urgency and the injuries and absences for the Jazz, I think, will play a role. But we'll see. If Mike Conley plays, that might be a different outcome. Shifting to the 76ers and the Hawks, now this is a very interesting one. This is a very interesting game. Obviously, the 76ers behind Joel Embiid's 28-9-8, won Game 3 on the road. Again, the score was a bit misleading. They pulled away in the third quarter. It was a 5-point game going into halftime. But I think the Hawks are going to win Game 4, and the main reason is because of the shooting. the three-point shooting, there was a huge disparity between the 76ers and the Hawks. 76ers shot about 48% from the three. Hawks shot 26%. Kevin Huerter was 1 for 5 from the three-point line, finished with 3 points. I don't think that is going to happen again. I think the Hawks at home will catch fire from distance in Game 4 at State Farm Arena. And I think that ultimately, I think they'll lose the series. They'll lose the series, but they'll win. They'll win Game 4. They'll win Game 4 for sure, is what I think. Because again, I just whenever I see a team that normally shoots well and the percentages just kind of skewed so heavily in favor of another team, I don't see those odds sticking as is. Just don't.